Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, or good morning, depending on where you are. I'm Matt Glynn, one of the directors here at the GLS Group, and really very pleased that you could make it for this GLS Legal Operations community event. By way of very brief introduction, today we're going to be talking about an amazing topic. We're going to be talking about your contracting function, and specifically how we can help you optimize it in 3 very powerful moves. By way of overview for the session, hoping to get you out of here in under 60 minutes. We're hoping to provoke thoughts that really help you question the prevailing narratives, plural, around how you optimize the contracting function, and give you concepts and principles so that post this session, you're going to have a very different perspective on what it is that can be achieved in terms of optimizing your contract function and how you can do it. So let's dive right in, and let me start by a little bit of scene setting. Why are we talking about the contracting function today as part of a legal operations, legal transformation community event? Well, the answer to that is quite simple and colourful. Firstly, the contracting function of the majority of the organisations that we deal with is hopelessly inefficient in most cases. It's point number one. Everybody wants improvement. Those who have joined the call are looking for improvement. Number two, contracting functions typically deal with or involve lawyers. And next to the executive level of most organizations, lawyers are the most highly paid members of any workforce. So any inefficient tasking of the lawyer or their involvement in an efficient process is going to be costly. Of real note is that the contracting function is absolutely ripe for transformation and inefficiency release. It's inefficiency release. The ability to show profound impact that the business will appreciate through contract function optimization efforts is imminently attainable for any team. Another key feature is that, and it flows from the last point, is that the contracting function is a rich seam of potential data. Contracting functions, no matter whether you're using a CLMS system that costs you a fortune each month, or whether you're using, an Excel spreadsheet, the contracting function is a data-rich process that can help you communicate to the business the value that you create. We call what the business appreciates the value stack, and contract function KPIs literally assault the value stack. It's a high visibility function. If you get your contract function optimized, it's noticed. It can really make a visible contribution to the things that the business appreciates, particularly deal velocity. How fast can you get a deal done? So from a transformation point of view, getting your contracting function right is an opportunistic and optimal starting point. There's also a massive productivity ripple effect that can be achieved, and we're going to come to that in move 3, whereby if you start in your optimization efforts at a particular point, it places your efforts on a downhill gradient where momentum's easy to maintain, if not increase. And then finally, because of all the reasons that I just mentioned, it would not be a surprise, or would not come as a surprise, that many of you may have already tried to improve your contracting function and either not succeeded or haven't finished the initiative, or the initiative underwhelmed. For those that know what to do and how to do it and when to do it, optimizing your contract function is really simple, really effective. For those that don't, it seems like a castle wall too thick, too tall to be ever breach. So there's the scene setting. Now, in terms of what we're going to cover today, we're going to look at 3 moves. Here's the spoiler alert. I'm going to tell you what they are straight up. Move 1, contracting function identification. Move 2, current performance status. And move 3, critical optimization pathway. Okay? So let's look straight away at move number 1. Okay? Contract function identification. Now, what I want to do is get a little bit interactive here. And I would like contributions from you, either by clicking the button and raising your hand, and we'll put the audio on, or just ping something through on the chat function. In as few words as possible, can you define what your contract function means to your business? What's its purpose? I'm just going to give us 30 seconds, and we'll just get some feedback through there. If it's easier, just raise your hand. There's no incorrect responses here either, by the way. And then monitor what's coming through on the chat. Got a couple of respondees drafting, which is great. I'd really encourage you to submit your views on this. That there are no wrong views, but it's going to serve to really reinforce a very powerful point. Define clauses. Yep. Drafting and reviewing contracts. That's the purpose. Yep. Okay. So absolutely, it involves all of those activities. What I want to share with you is that and this might be a little bit controversial, but that's okay. For most in-house leaders, for most heads of procurement, right, they understand what their contract function actually is about as well as they understand and know their car. Now, I want you just to go with me for a minute here. So imagine for all of those that drive, you feel like, or you probably feel like you have a very special relationship with your car. You know how the click of the door when you open with the key fob, you know when you hop into the car, how the seat feels, you know when you press the button, the sound of the engine. More importantly, you know just how hard you have to press the accelerator and to change lanes, or how hard you have to hit the brake, and how quickly when you turn the button on will the lights or the hazard lights come on. You feel like you have an intimate relationship where you're in full control of the car. Now picture this. Hop out of the car, pop the hood, and tell me what you see. What is all that stuff? The pipes, the tubes, the shiny bits, the plastic bits, all of those moving parts without which that experience that you've hopefully just related to doesn't exist. Now, my point is this. In-house leaders have typically had this sense of what their contracting function can achieve. But if some small little component in it under the bonnet breaks, they don't necessarily know what the cause is and how to fix it. The traditional spot response has been twofold. The first, the most common response. If the contracting function is underperforming, there has been a propensity towards what we call brute force lawyering, bringing in more people and throwing it at the function to try and achieve it. And for those that are more forward-looking and perhaps have deeper pockets, there's been an even worse response, and that's that knee-jerk reaction. Well, let's let legal technology solve it. Let's just go out and buy this CLMS system, and hopefully that'll fix it. That's a little bit like going to the next mechanic and hoping that they're going to do the right thing by you. Unless you know what happens underneath the bonnet, you're never going to be able to make any kind of efficient qualitative intervention in your contracting function. So in this analogy, what it really means is that almost all in-house leaders have very little idea as to what their contracting function is all about. You understand what it can do, but how does it work? And if you don't understand how it works, how can you improve it? So let me give you a conceptual take on what that contracting function is all about. So the purpose of the contracting function is as follows. There are 1 million different types of contracts that an organization can enter into. New revenue agreements for products, services, new market partnership agreements, sales channels, toner cartridge MSAs, you name it. All of those agreements, regardless of their rationale, go into the contracting function process. But what is the role of that process? Is it clauses? Is it drafting and reviewing contracts? It's all of that. But conceptually, what is the job of that? Well, the job of the contracting function is to take whatever comes down that funnel and land it into a box or a target area that we call the good or the safe business zone. Your business will have defined that these are the legal risk contractual profiles of the deals that we can do. This is the compliance profile of deals that we can do. This is the financial profile of deals that we can do. Okay? So we can have lots of complex reasons, explanations, but effectively whatever comes through the door of legal and procurement, we've got to take it in its form that it enters, and we've got to conform it into a profile that is acceptable to the business, i.e. it lands in the good or safe business zone. Now, let me tell you a couple of really bizarre facts. Here's facts number one. 95% of legal teams do not have a contracting policy. The whole point of your contracting function is to land it in an acceptable zone so that we can do business. The boxes are ticked. And yet 95% of legal teams do not have a contracting policy. Same applies for compliance, and all too often, but less frequently than the case of legal and compliance, on the financial front. Let that sink in. Ask yourself right now, if you had to send to a lawyer that joined your team today, do you have a policy document which says on indemnities, liabilities, warranties, this is the ceiling and this is the floor of where we need to be, and this is how far left and this is how far right? Without a plan, you end up exactly where you're headed. Can you imagine if your job, which is the topic today, the optimization of your contracting function, that's a journey. Just showed you what the journey is. How can you plan for an efficient journey if you do not even know where you are headed? By the time we finish this session, you will understand the significance of this particular asset. If you don't have the GPS coordinates, what use is the sat-nav system to you? What use is a map to you? What use is a guide to you? You don't know where to tell them where to go. Just think about that. Most teams do not even know what they want their contracting function to achieve, and yet we've all signed on to a session today about how to optimize it. But good news, more on this in move number 3, but let the enormity and the magnitude of that observation sink in. So let's go back to move 1. What is the contracting function? I'm now going to attempt live to reveal for you in all its glory what we see as the contracting function. Ruben, if I can just ask you to let me know whether that has come through.
Yep, that is coming through.
Okay. Now, what you have on the screen is, and apologies because I'm looking away at another screen here so I can talk you through what we're looking at. What we have on the screen here, and this is on the GLS Legal Operations Center, the Transformation Tube Map, we have the 15 most critical functions of a legal department and there's your contracting function. What we have produced for you is an engineering-led, I'm just going to blow that up for you if I can. We've got an engineering-led view of all of the essential components of a contracting function. No more gut instinct descriptors of what you think it is. From an engineering component, from a step point of view, what is your contracting function? Probably for the first time, most of you have seen this. I'm just going to make it appear on one screen. Just give it 2 seconds. Okay, so there's your contracting function in all of its glory. There's around 27 different elements. Post this, we're going to send you a link directly to it. What we have just done in move 1 is take the abstract notion, the hard to identify notion of what a contract function is, and we've defined it in a DNA level, engineering level breakdown. The power of this model and your ability to leverage it will become apparent as we go through this. Recap. Most legal teams mischaracterize or don't quite understand what the point of the contracting function is. The point of the contracting function is to take whatever piece of paper comes into the organization with someone that wants to do business with you, and that function needs to, through as an efficient process as possible, get it into the safe landing zone, and if we can't, then we can't do business with them. Okay? That process, which we have now brought to life through an engineers-led view of what it entails, from ingress through the legal department front door all the way through to the contract administration phase, we now have a granular depiction of it. Okay? So move 1, contract function identification. Henceforth, if you're on this call, you now know what the purpose of your contract function is in functional and real terms, and you'll also be able to point to an optimized visual depiction of what a contract function is. Let's move forward. Move 2. Now that we know what the purpose of our contract function is, now we can point to the DNA level map of what our contract function is. Steps 2 is that we have to assess its current performance levels. We know what we got, how well is it performing? Before I actually go into a breakdown of what step 2 entails, spoiler alert, I'm going to take you through the consequences of what happens if you avoid or you skip this step. They're serious. So here's what happened, and don't say you weren't warned. If you do not assess what the current performance level of your contracting function, and we've given you a means to identify what that is and what to test, you are not going to be able to identify the most efficient starting point. You're going to have a diminished ability to justify any initiatives that you want to launch to improve the function of your contracting function. If you're successful, how are you going to demonstrate the value of what you're delivering to the business if you don't have that starting point in terms of data? If you don't reach out to everyone involved in the contracting function and get their views on performance, you're going to miss, and this is one of the most important things in legal transformation, legal operations, you're going to have missed a vital opportunity to engage in a change management driver, which is securing business buy-in, which usually asks and is most often obtained by simply asking, what do you think? You're going to miss a huge opportunities to engender and drive efficiencies into your exercise. Misleverage opportunities is what we call it. You may start at the wrong place. There's a certain order of doing things when it comes to contract function transformation. If you mess up the order, your incline becomes steep. If you get the order right, you've got a downhill run. If you don't do the current status assessment, you're going to miss the power of leveraging resource categories for a multiplier effect. A couple of examples. You've got paralegals. Are they performing? What if you take the paralegal and you combine it with a checklist? Or what if you take the paralegal and you combine it with a checklist, which is then put into an AI-based software system so that you can get first-pass contract reviews more efficiently done? Okay. Critically, you're running blind. If you don't undertake that performance assessment, that current status assessment, you're running blind on where to go and how to get there most efficiently. Understandably and correctly, your initiatives are going to lack credibility. So let's go in and have a look at step 2. But this and these here are the consequences if you miss this step. Overarching theory for transformation, not just contracting function, but all in-house legal functions. If you want to be successful, you must get to metrics fast. Why? Well, there's an irrefutable truth that legal teams, procurement teams, contract function teams need to start talking the language of business. And if they don't, then the business will continue to ignore them. If you thought what was important to the contracting function, what your views were relevant and persuasive, then why haven't you got the resources that you need to improve things? The answer is because you're more than likely not talking in terms of what the data, what the business values. We have two concepts. We have two concepts, and they're called the business value exchange, and we like it. We draw an analogy to a stock trader. Okay, the first, or the primary market, is what the business, not the legal team, what the business absolutely values the most generally, and in no particular order. Business velocity. How fast could legal assist in getting the deal done? Deal enablement. Cost savings. If you do this, how much money are you going to save us? How much time are you going to save us, which is another way of expressing cost. Alignment. Your initiative aligns with the realization of our corporate objectives. How? And if this initiative, what data is it going to yield that I can look at and draw insights from? Everything on this list is important to the business, but the secondary markets, the secondary types of business value outcomes tend to be particularly coveted for the heads of legal. Now, why do I pass these out as I have? Well, because sometimes the biggest obstacle to transforming any function in your legal team, but the contracting function, could be the leadership of the legal team themselves. Don't want to be age discriminatory here, but those over 55 tend to be quite wedded to the ways of yesteryear in terms of how they manage things. So the conversation with them might be more around speed of service. What's the service levels that we can offer our internal clients? It could be internal client satisfaction levels. It could be tracking the incidents and ideally reduced incidents of disputes and regulatory compliance issues. And it could also appeal and pique the competitive nature. What are our peers at different organizations with similar legal teams doing? So the performance assessment, I've given you these headline features because the assessment needs to speak to these factors, because these are the factors that your business will value. If you can make an optimization recommendation that's going to save time, save money, increase business velocity, these go directly to what the business values, right? This is not an expense acquisition. It's a capital request for a return on investment. All of these things could be measured. So optimization, now that we know what our contract function looks like and its purpose is, optimization starts with knowing your current status. Let me unpack that a wee bit. So, and let's actually look at another startling revelation. So in move 1, I said that 95% of legal teams do not have a contracting policy. They haven't defined their safe zone, their good business zone. But here's another startling fact. 95% have not undertaken an assessment of their contracting function. Now, if we combine those two factors together, here's the reality. Most legal teams don't know what they want by way of an outcome from their contracting function, and most legal teams don't actually understand what they already have as a contracting function. It's a fairly suboptimal context for a high-performing contract function. You don't know what it's intended to achieve, you haven't defined the safe zone, and you haven't assessed the performance of that which you've got. You might be working on gut hunches. Oh, well, yeah, our templates are probably not where they should be, or we're short-handed. But these are hunches. They might be good hunches, but how do you explain a hunch to the business? The business wants, this is a database representation of the problem. Here's a database representation of the upside if we fix it in the terms that business will understand, recognize, and appreciate. And also here's the cost if we don't. So for most in-house legal teams, does it come as any surprise that they are underperforming? The cost of underperformance in contracts is huge. Point I've already made, because it involves lawyers, and lawyers are expensive. But the good news is, and that's why I started with the scene setter, is the extent of inefficiencies in the contract function universe is so gratuitously evident that it's not difficult at all to bring recognizable, measurable, and quantifiable improvements to the contract function. What we're doing here is we're giving you the matrix moment, right? We're inviting you to see your contracting function for what it really is. No matter how experienced you are, no matter how long you're doing it, ask yourself these two questions. Do you have a definition of the safe zone for your organization? And when was the time you built up a quant-based view of how well your existing contract function has performed? I'm just going to pause for a moment. I'm just going to share with you a conversation that we had 3 weeks ago. Head of legal, very, very enthusiastic about bringing efficiencies inside their contracting function. Deputized a senior member of the legal team to oversee it. And we engaged with that person. And the person was, well, this all sounds very interesting, this legal function transformation bit, this legal operations stuff, but I think we're okay. I've produced some model clauses, and I've got a little bit of a handle on some preferred positions. All good stuff. So we're probably okay. What have we got here? We've got a head of legal that's keen to transform, and we've got team members that think they've got it all in hand. Some basic questions to this senior team member. How many contracts do you have under management? Oh, I'm not actually sure. Okay. Could you give us an estimate? Oh, I'd need to go back and check. What type of contracts do you use? How do you break them down? Is it by spend category? Is it by template type? Is it by... Yeah, I need to get back to you on that. What's the average contract closure time that you're working with that you'd like to see improve? I'm not sure. The most rudimentary questions, unable to answer, and they're really easy data points to obtain. If you're talking to your CFO and you're trying to stand up an initiative to get support, if you can't come up with a data-based view of the key aspects of your contracting function, why would you expect to be taken seriously? Okay. There's a couple of points in all of that, not least of which is the credibility, is that the best, they say that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Okay, people think they have a handle on it, but they're missing these two premises that I've just shared. What is the contracting function, what its purpose, and what does it break down, and what are the smallest bits that constitute the critical resources that make up each step of it? Have you identified those? And then have you tested the performance levels of those? Let me give you some basic principles around what this entails. The question's really simple. The current assessment focuses on what have you got? And most often people fail to realize that they've got far more resources to support the contracting function than they thought. And in relation to what you got, does it work as it should? Working out, does it work as it should, is a little bit of a tough question to answer, but not nearly as tough as before, because in move one, we've given you a DNA level blueprint as to what a theoretically optimized best practice contracting function looks like. You now have the power of comparison to compare and contrast. I say it's tough because there's a lot happening out there that can help the contracting function. There's massive developments in, amongst other things, legal analytics, legal tech, process automation, agile resourcing, all of which could help. But it's tough for you to keep on top of all of that. It's one of our main jobs here at GLS. We're constantly scouring the market for what can optimize a contracting function, and we down select to those that work. And we're one of the few organizations in the world that actually have benchmark data as to what a peer legal department is for most legal teams is doing at a best practice work, at best practice level. So what have you got? You need to ask yourself, what do I have? How do you work that out? Well, you've got our model that you can compare and contrast again. And then you have to ask, does it work as it should? Let me give you some basics around some basic principles as to how you need to build up your database view of performance of your contracting function. One, you have the DNA view. Look at the transformation tube map that we've shared with you. Initial audit focus. Now, don't get panicky when you see something like that. If you're about to deploy ironclad CLMS system globally for your 160 lawyers, maybe you want to have a pretty close look at every aspect of your contracting function, because this is going to have global ramifications. It's going to roll into the tens of millions of dollars over the 3-year lifespan of most of these CLMS systems before they're pulled out. Okay. But it could also be a quick performance assessment of just one small part of that contracting function. It could be your contracting policy. It could be your sign-off protocols. What we're sharing with you is you now have the full spectrum of what your contracting function is, and you need to test how it's performing. Now, who to test with? Well, these days, you can ask everybody. Budget's never an obstacle to get feedback. Why? Because you can initiate desktop surveys. You can see audit methodology. In 2 to 3 minute surveys, you can ask every member of your team to provide feedback. From a change management point of view, obviously talking face to face with key stakeholders is a great idea. We have a whole module on building up your data profile, but the key principles here, your data must look at the legal function. You now have, sorry, your contracting function. You now have a view of what that is. You can look at the whole thing, you can look at part of it. You need to get views from everybody that's involved, and you need to get that back to you in a quant-based, a data-based format. And the key outcomes of your inquiry will be twofold. A data-based depiction of what you've got, and a data-based view as to the impact of the business. And I've gone back to, I could go back to the drivers here. Okay. When you do your survey, there are 3 findings. See how we're taking the complexity of this and we're simplifying it. There's 3 findings when you run the slide rule over your contract function and assess what you've got. The first finding is we don't have it. We have it or we don't have it. The second finding is we have it and it works really well, or there's a bit of polish needed. And the third finding is it massively underperforms. It's a pretty simple process. And in relation to those findings, 2 of the 3 are extraordinarily positive findings. Why do I say? If you don't have it, that is more often than not an easier problem to fix than you have it and it's massively underperforming. I'll come to that. If we have it and it works really well, that's a brilliant finding, because usually it's the case that, let me give you an example. For MNCs with geographically dispersed legal teams, all too often you'll find that there are pockets of high watermark practices. It could be they've managed to automate some essential workflows and it's delivering great results, but that's not being used by other parts of the organization. So if the finding that you get is we've got it and it works really well, your optimization response is let's leverage it. Let's get everybody on this bus. And the case is made because it's already working inside your organization with all of its complex environmental dynamics. Same with polish needed. Polish needed means it's essentially there. It just needs a little bit more and we've got something that'll work really well. So finding 1 and finding 2A and B are outstanding findings. But if you haven't done your current assessment and made this categorization, you're depriving yourself of leverage initiatives that cost you effectively nothing to implement. And they are so low risk because they're already working or almost working as you want in an optimal fashion inside your own organization. The worst category, and this is where it can be expensive from a change management burden and also financially, is where you have it, but it's massively underperforming. Now, these things are usually not the case that you've used a wooden beam when you should have used a reinforced concrete beam. These problems tend to be of the meddlesome man-made kind. Let me give you some examples. It could be someone in finance, through the hierarchical nuances of the power totem pole, decides that they want to sign off on every single contract. It doesn't matter what you do pre-contract sign-off to build efficiencies, it runs straight into a blockage point. Do you think fixing a CLMS, putting a CLMS is going to make that problem go away? Absolutely not. It's going to make it more amplified. You'll just get there faster. For findings 3, it's the most difficult one to fix. It could be, let me give you some more examples. It could be the templates aren't automation ready. The templates are verbose. They take too long for our supply chain or our counterparties to work through. But because Pierre from Paris wrote them 2 decades ago, we can't change because he happens to be the group chief legal officer. 3 findings. Don't have it, that's usually easy because you just go out and find the component that works. If you look at our legal operations center, we have almost 1,000 different things you can plug into a standard contracting function. 2, we have it and it works really well or polish needed. Leverage opportunities. The best possible finding, that one, because it's already calibrated to your ecosystem. And then 3, well, that's where our problems come in. So current assessment, now let's look at the data attributes that we're going to be looking for, okay? And then I'm going to show you how you pull it all together. I'm going to show you a flow chart that makes planning for the optimization of your legal function so much easier. Okay, so what are we looking for? Firstly, we're looking to quant out the process and its performance. If you look at the red boxes there. And we have a saying at GLS. If it's not data, it's not legal operations. All of these indicia are going to be data points that we can collect, that we can quantify, in many cases numerically, even user satisfaction. Are you happy? Yes. Well, how do we quant that? Well, 0 to 5. 0, very unhappy. 5, very, very happy. And then we have 73% of people who are very unhappy, whatever it is. But let's go through it systematically. Inquiry 1, present or not present? And thereafter, if it's present, is it working or not working? We can answer that efficiently. We look for quant data around volumes. How many contracts are we managing? How many claims? How many files? How many queries? Criticality. Is it important to the business from a compliance point of view? Business criticality. Does it relate to a new division? Cost criticality. We need to put some indicia around criticality. Time. It almost sounds cliche, and I just naturally flowed in. Time is money, but it is. Okay. How long is it taking us? How many man hours? What's the cost of delay? And that's critical, third time I've said it, because the cost of the raw ingredients for most legal teams, i.e. the lawyer, is so high. That's not a bad thing, right? Lawyers are amongst the smartest out there, right? They do complex work. We want them. We want the talent. We need to pay for it. It's not the cost of the lawyer that's a problem. It's that when we deploy them in inefficient processes, that's the problem. Could you imagine paying $100 million for Ronaldo? He's the football player. And then you ask him to drive the team bus or bring on the oranges at halftime. No, you need him on the field kicking goals. It's the same with our lawyers. We need them there doing the complex stuff. User satisfaction. What do our internal clients think? What does the business units think? What's the user satisfaction level? And then obviously we can bring all of those factors either directly or one step away from a cost implication. Let me pull some of these threads together. We will send this to you. So how can this data be used? Now, the beauty of what I've just shared with you is those first two moves will apply to any process inside your legal team. Let's go through it. You've been asked to optimize your contract function, okay? How do you do it? This is how you do it. We start with contracting function, and the first thing we ask is relevance. Is it needed? Is it nice to have, or is it not needed? And because we don't live in the land of unlimited resources, anything that's a nice to have or not needed, we ignore, don't even think about it, okay? And then if it's needed, we keep moving to the right. We benchmark it against peers. That's important, because if you're achieving 2 and everyone's happy, but your peers are achieving off the same resource set 10, then there's efficiency gains that you can move into. And then we look at the status of performance. So it's needed, and compared to our peers, it's performing perfectly. What's our strategy? Our strategy is, well, we can leverage that, but we don't leverage everything, right? If it's critical, well, that should be a near-term goal that we can implement. If it's a quick win, near-term goal. But just going back to status. So if it's performing perfectly, our action is going to leverage it. If it's unoptimized, well, our strategy will be optimized. If it's broken, we fix it. If it's missing, we implement it. And you can see how going through this decision flow, automatically our planning priorities make themselves known. So let's just go through a couple of more scenarios. It's needed, but it's broken, right? We need to fix it, right? If it's absolutely business critical, then we better get on with it and do that quickly. But that's not the end of the prioritization focus. If it's broken and it's business critical, but no one in the business cares about it, which is hard to imagine, well, we need to look at the value stack, right? Can we make the biggest possible case by reference to these indicators. And as it should, because finite resource planning theory dictates that it should, we go for where the biggest amount of value can be created if we've got a choice between a limited number of initiatives, but even less amount of resources. That's how you use the data. I urge you to spend a little bit of time with that. We're probably going to put this up on the Knowledge Center. It's a very, very powerful planning resource. And by the way, your near-term goal is usually 0 to 6 months, mid-term 6 to 12, long-term sort of pushing out up to 3 years, okay? Right. Now, before we jump into move 3, and we've called move 3 same as everyone. Why do we call it same as everyone? Because no matter how much time you spend auditing every aspect of your contracting function, there are certain things that everyone has to do if you're going to get to where you need to get. Just bear that in mind. There are certain things that everyone's going to have to do in order to get to where you need to get, which is improved performance. That means end state. Your end state is going to be context specific, entirely up to the environmental factors that exist, right? Your budget, leadership desire, leadership prioritization, perception, time available to the task. You've got some choices around your start point that's going to affect your end state. There are multiple start points. We call it the house on fire, which is something that if you don't put it out now, then you're going to, the business is going to burn down. It could be what we call the downhill drive, where if you start with something which creates the most productivity ripple effect, and we'll talk about in a section, that makes sense. It could be, according to our tube map theory, the foundational stations on that line, they determine the overall performance capability of the contracting function. If you do not have, and we'll come to it, a contracting policy, then you have artificially limited, throttled what every other aspect of your contracting function can achieve. Now, the norm is more brute force lawyering, right? In the past, because people don't understand what their contracting comprises, how each component works, how they hand off from one to the other, right? It's the same as your car. I press start and it didn't start, and you take it in to the mechanic, and the mechanic says, I need a new X42, and you go, I guess I need a new X42, because you don't know. And the equivalent of the mechanic's X42 recommendation these days is you need a CLMS system, it'll fix everything up. No, it won't. All it'll do is automate what you've got. And if what you've got doesn't work offline, it's not going to work online. But we have to be mindful of the CLMS because it's the tail that wags the dog for most legal teams. Most contract optimization processes have not started because the team have managed to find reprieve from the onslaught of work volumes to step back to plan their optimization. It's because somebody somewhere has decided, let's buy a CLMS system, and all of a sudden there's a new project on and you start having to do things that system requires. So the migration to a CLMS system, it's on the cards for every legal team, right? But what we're seeing, and it's not because these CLMS systems aren't great, they're all really good at what they do, but we're jumping the gun, right? Thinking that a CLMS system can lead your optimization strategy. But there are function essentials, right? There are certain things that you simply need, period. Whether you have a CLMS or to make your CLMS work, there's certain things that you need. So to close out this session and move 3, the same as everyone else, we're going to look at that. One slide, extremely powerful. There's a pre-CLMS critical pathway, right? And it starts with what we talked about in module 1. If you do not have a policy asset which says for our contracting function, this is the safe zone, you do not have a contracting function. You have an amalgamation of processes, the purpose of which is to get a signature on and you move to the next thing. If you do not have a contracting function, a policy, you do not have anything that has any prospect of being an optimized function. That's the first thing. If you ignore that, you probably think the world is flat. From your contracting function, the next thing, the most obvious thing that needs to be done is the derivation of a clause bank. Why? Because in a contracting function, to the 80% mark, every commercial agreement you sign is signed up of precisely the same things. It'll all have a notification provision, it'll all have a dispute provision, it'll all have a surviving rights provision. You need as an organization to take your contracting policy and reduce that to a set of authorized clauses, which means you have the building blocks for 75% of every template you ever need. You'll have a repository of clauses that encapsulate your group legal policy on that point, ready to put into third-party agreements. We're building up speed because it's a downhill, gentle downhill slope that we're going down. If we haven't done the maintenance on our core corporate assets, the templates which bring in the revenue, that hold together, glue together our supply chain, that keep the lights on, well, maybe it's time to look at those. But you don't just pile in and try and update 50 of the things, you take one. You take a services agreement, because by looking at a services agreement, it covers more legal issue landscape than any other agreement type. Your position as a customer will make you think about more legal concepts, which once you settle, you then have your contracting policy. And guess what? Inside every long form template, there lives a what? A short form. But because you've got some basic contract metrics around your paper versus third-party paper, and then inside third-party paper, which third-party paper is negotiable, which one's not, you come up with some checklists that are specific to each category. And then because you've got some great lawyers and some great procurement and some great commercial leads that know everything about contracting, we take it out of their heads and we put it in the playbook. And if we haven't done any of those things, all of those things, you have no business going near a CLMS system, because those things are the raw materials that your CLMS system's going to work on. The clause bank that automates your agreement, you need to be ready for it, prepped. The contracting policy, these are the rules that are going to define the workflows on the CLMS. You haven't done it, you're not going to look at it. The AI contract review feature that you find so attractive. If you haven't defined what your contracting policy is and called it out in terms of third-party reviews, when you deploy your AI tool, it's going to look for everything, which is inappropriate, because then a lawyer's got to look at it, and those lawyers are expensive. The point is that all of these things, no matter where you're at, if you're starting a journey, great. If you want to check in to make sure that your journey is on track, you're keeping up to date, you've still got to check all of these assets. This is the minimal critical pathway for any contract function. The CLMS automation, the AI contract review, that's all stuff for tomorrow. But these things here are things that you can create yourself. You can take, if you have a commitment to sensible market, balanced market risk assets, these things are already available in a legal operations center, get you where you need to be in 10% of the time and cost. Just contour it to make it your own. These are the things that you have to do. So you're looking for, move 3 is acceptance. The future is we're going to end up automated. Probably sooner than you think if you're in a large organization, because someone in finance or someone in procurement is going to think it's, or someone in the tech team is going to go and buy this thing for you. So you want to achieve maximum productivity ripple effect. You want your gradient to be a gentle decline, not a slippery incline. You need to rapidly develop these tools that's going to drive end user performance. We're often asked, how long would it take to do this? Are the gains that come from this optimization in terms of hours saved and readiness for process automation, how long does it take before we realize, or is it literally just fool's gold, or is it the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? Imminently. If you are committed, if you do things in the right way, you can have a substantial upgrade of the pre-CLMS pathway inside of 100 days. Here's some executive timetables. The most important and challenging part is your contracting policy, getting that defined. Don't be intimidated by it. To be successful in legal operations, here's a couple of things that you need to know. Number one, you're going to have constant headwinds. Always. There's always going to be pressure pushing you back. Number two, whatever goals that were set, it's going to be de-scoped on you, right? It's going to change the direction of the legal team, or some projects going to come up, but you've got to keep moving forward, right? So flexibility to pivot. Headwinds, flexibility. So your contracting policy, you want to move the needle. It doesn't have to be for every single provision. Why don't you start with a contracting provision that deals with the 6 issues that account for 90% of the commercial litigation globally? Liability, indemnities, termination, payment, intellectual property, and more recently, data protection. You can throw reps and warranties in there. Clause bank flows neatly, but when you produce a clause bank, you have to be thinking about contract automation. Contract automation and your CLMS system means the argument about whether it's which side of the Atlantic in terms of drafting style. The debate's finished. Automation wins. We need plain English. We need one concept per clause, because if we don't have that, then our if this then that. That's what the front interview will be when you compile or place your order for a contract to be generated. Exclusivity, yes or no. We can't have a clause which says, as our friends and Americans like to do with capitalized letters and the like, well, it could be exclusive and it might not be exclusive, and sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't, but we're not really sure. It depends. We need just succinct one concept. That's your timeline. I'm 3 slides away from completing. I just want to give you a little bit more than just these 3 hacks. Sorry, the three moves. I'm going to give you some quick win strategies. All of these are effective. Some of you might be thinking, oh my goodness, I don't have the bandwidth, or I don't have the internal appetite for a detailed assessment of my contracting function. Okay, adapt. That's what effective legal operations looks like. If we're trying to make the case for an initiative to optimize our contract function, let's get some estimates from our attorneys. We can't ask them to do time sheets, but let's get some estimates about how many things that they're doing that we might describe as an administrative task. Estimates can be extremely powerful and very cost effective. And it doesn't matter whether we get a bad finding. Bad findings are good in legal operations because it means that we can demonstrate improvement. Quant questions. When we reach out and get our data, use online forms. Use yes or no. Use true or false, 0 to 5. And the beauty of that is that if you're using SharePoint, Microsoft Forms, or any number of those online forms, they have the most extraordinary, powerful AI insights that are generated, all freely available. Try it. Clause bank. If you haven't got a clause bank and you're working in the contracting function, you're falling well short of current best practice. Well short. You need to sort it. With an $8 plugin, every member of your team can have access to the same clauses. Imagine that, one source of the truth. Just think about the time saved with that. Services agreements. If you're going to do anything to optimize your template, start there. I've talked about why. I won't talk about face-to-face interviews, but usually there are some key stakeholders whose views on how your function runs. It's very, very important to get feedback. No-touch contracting policy and assets. Very powerful. There are certain agreement types that, provided certain rules are observed, predefined criteria, that there shouldn't be any need for the contracting team to touch. NDAs, purchase orders. It literally should be fill out details and click with DocuSign and you're done. Some basic data analytics over your contracting inventory will tell you what they are. Contracting data. It will entirely change your ability to demonstrate function. AI, for those that have got the legal tech bug. Dose of reality. It's a long way off from generative AI that's going to mark up your contract. And even if it was really good, the liability implications is that law firms will never get insurance for AI generated advice. So it's probably not going to happen. But at the moment, there are so many AI contract review tools that even just for issue identification, natural language processing indemnity is actually the same as saying for your account or you'll reimburse, which massively speeds up the process of getting the lawyer on target to make the review. Self-serve kiosks, we've talked about that. Okay, pre-agreement types, playbooks. These are the powerful optimization hacks. Okay, so let me wrap this up and get you out on time. Concluding thoughts. Contracting function is far more than just a bit of paper and some people who argue over words. It's a complex process, but we have demystified. It doesn't matter what comes in through the funnel, why, where it originates. The goal of the contracting function is as fast and as efficiently and as qualitatively as possible to get those agreements into the safe business landing zone. It's not a tiny pinpoint prick size thing, it's a zone. And we need to define it. It's a major function, it's highly visible, it's resource intensive, it's expensive to run, but there is huge significant value attached to it. Getting optimization initiatives stood up saves the business money, it creates deal velocity. All of these things are valued. But it's a typically inefficient process. And we've just seen 95% of teams don't have a safe zone defined, and 95% of teams have not run even the most cursory of slide rules over their contracting function. There's incredibly easy ROI available by optimizing the contracting function. If you have a portfolio of 1,000 contracts, which is not a huge number, if you could pull out 45 minutes of efficiency across that portfolio, what does that look like? Quantifiable. We've worked with clients who have taken out over 10,000 hours across the Asia-Pac region. Quantifiably demonstrated time savings. We outperform in terms of ROI anything that organization's investment committees achieved. The 3 moves that get you there. The conceptual framework for your approach. Recognize it. Use the tube map. Demystify this notion of a contracting function and default to a model which gives you things to check. Because the question in move 2 is not difficult. How's it performing? Is it there or not? If it is there, is it any good? And then regardless of, and it's easy to get swept away, and some transformation consultants will urge you to undertake an examination of every single component and every single process. No. You can fast forward all of that. If you want to move forward, these are the things that you're going to have to do. You don't have to think too hard about it, because at some point on your technology pathway is going to be a CLMS system and you have to be ready for it. But what we're telling you is there's a way in which you can get there that gives you a gentle declining slope, not a steep, slippery one. Data findings, we've talked about the data that matters, how you get it. This is what's going to drive your credibility. The critical pathway, it's designed to produce maximum productivity ripple effect. Data usage, if it's not there and it's critical to the business, well, that's an informed priority that you've established that the business will understand. And we've talked about some optimization hacks. There's plenty of them. I'm going to throw it over there for any Q&A that we might have on this session. Do we have any questions? Feel free to, Ruben, maybe if you can turn off the mics, or if you wanted to ping your questions through, do let us know. But otherwise, I hope that you found that, if not I hope you found it helpful and enlightening, because what we do is the main drivers of everything that we do at GLS. Just check the chat. Looks like we've got a couple of questions here. No, okay. Outstanding. Well, look, thank you everyone for attending. I hope you found this session useful. We look forward to seeing you at the next one. Many thanks.